God of our ancestors, Elohim, Avotenu v'Imotenu, we affirm that you have created each of us in your sacred image, endowed us with the inherent right to dignity and no, can't hear me. All right, I'll just do it this way. Here we go. Yes, here we go. Hi. Shabbat Shalom. Eloheinu v'Elohei v'Imotenu v'Avotenu. We affirm that you have created each of us in your sacred image, endowed us with the inherent right to dignity and autonomy. Judaism has always focused on being a religion about creating a just and a moral society. From the time in the desert to today, our time in the snow, our texts and our teachings and our prayers help us to craft more than just ourselves. We use that ancient wisdom to help craft a society to be more loving, more caring, and more just. And on this snowy Shabbat, we're guided by our tradition, and as we, Temple Sholom, participate with over 100 other synagogues around the world to honor and to lift up Repro Shabbat. We celebrate the critical importance of reproductive health access, reproductive rights, and reproductive justice. And we learn more about Judaism's approach to these issues. 1 in 4 women and all people who are able to get pregnant will have an abortion by the age of 45. We know them, we are them, we have cared for them, we have sat in the sadness that they are holding with them, and we have even sat in the relief with them. For so many of our Temple Sholom families, abortion is part of their life cycle. And in the words of Rabbi Shira Wallach, we must build and cultivate loving spaces that celebrate all parts of the life cycle, all journeys of struggle and of joy. Tonight on this Shabbat, we also celebrate 2 incredible life cycle moments, celebrating the joy of both Samara Grossman and Braden Mink. So we're going to invite up their families to help us to bring in the light of Shabbat. So if you'll make your way up, Caroline and Dan Grossman, Asher Grossman, and Samara, you'll join me up here, and Terry and Ronnie Mink and Ryder Mink. Page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai
Samara and Braden, you two will join us up here in the middle as getting ready for that moment where the two of you are each called up to Torah. You get to celebrate the joy of Shabbat and leading us in that as we rise in body or in spirit on page 123 for the Kiddush.
You can take your mat. Oh, no, you have to keep it on.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kadsho, b'ahava u'ratzon, yimlanu. Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tehillah l'mikrei kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, ki banu v'charta, v'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshcha, v'ahava uvratzon, kinaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen. Yasher koach. We're so excited to celebrate the two of you.
You have a week.
We may be seated. We are going to turn to page 138, where we welcome in the Sabbath love, the Sabbath bride, into our space, helping us feel that extra special love and joy of Shabbat. Page 138. We rise and face the entrance of our spaces.
גם בשמחה ותולה, תוך אמוניה וכולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה.
וחדותי לכלכלה, בני שבת וקבלה לך.
כלכלה, בני שבת וקבלה.
always thought about what it meant for the Sabbath love to enter each and every sanctuary on every Shabbat, how much more so for each of our friends who are joining our Temple Sholom community, not just here, but joining each one of the 78 of our friends who are joining us on Zoom and bringing us all together in that beautiful way. We turn to page 146 as we pray the words of Baruch Hu.
Lai, 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 lai. 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Vaed Leolam 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 On the top of page 150, we prepare for the Shema with Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Al Ken Adonai Eloheinu, V'shofeinu u'kumeinu, Naftiach bechukecha, V'nizmach livrei Toratecha, U'lemishpotecha, Le'olam v'ayed. Yehei chayinu, Ve'orach yaminu, Ve'orach yameinu, U'vahem nehege, Yomam v'layla, Yomam v'layla. V'yavatcha chasir mimenu le'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
We may be seated.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'ayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha b'veitecha ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לתותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני Adonai Elohechem, Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני Adonai Elohechem.
Amen. So yesterday, a number of us from the staff of Temple Sholom, we joined a training with the Secured Community Network, the SCN, that trains a lot of Jewish organizations on how to keep ourselves safe. And in that training, the trainer shared a story that he once learned, which is this. There were 7 frogs on a log, and 3 decided to jump off. How many frogs remained on the log? Anybody? Right, everybody knows it's a trick question. Whenever there's a question that's asked in this way, so you were right not to take the bait. And he said, many people would say there would be 4 remaining on the log. But the thing is that those 3 had only decided to jump off. They didn't actually jump off the log. And so really the answer was that 7 remained on the log. Now he told us this because he said sometimes you have to have the chutzpah to act. That sometimes it's not enough just to decide something. You actually have to take action. And when we read and then sing the words of Mi Chamocha, we realize that we're commemorating a time in our history where our people took action. And they took action for freedom. And they took action for justice. And they took action ultimately for redemption. And so when we sing the words of Mi Chamocha, we are celebrating ourselves, saying what it is that we're going to take action for justice, for freedom, for choice, for Judaism. And so we turn now to page 158 and sing these words together.
Lai, 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 lai,
I love that the cantor refers to the Hashkivenu as our people's lullaby, praying that we go and take rest to then wake ourselves the next day to life renewed. May we feel around us and over us a shelter of peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hakivenu shomreinu leChayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leShalom, v'hakivenu shomreinu leChayim.
We turn now to page 164 and rise for our tefillah.
na 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Gadol Hagibor Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו ואהבה מלך עוזר מושיע מגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני אחר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע בנאמנת על החיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
On a snowy day like today, I can't help but read a poem as an invitation to our silent prayer that some of you I know can recite by heart. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. So we continue now in silent prayer, contemplating what we will do with those miles that we go before we sleep. And when you're finished with your personal prayer, please be seated. this past Wednesday, I went to a city council meeting, not a usual place that I find myself on a Wednesday morning, but I was there because they were adopting a resolution to recognize and bring more attention to Holocaust, the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, that would be celebrated, commemorated on January 27th. And so there they were in the city council with Alderwoman Silverstein introducing it, with the mayor getting behind it. And then one by one, the aldermen stood up and talked about their connection and why they thought it was so important to recognize this day, and why it was that they wanted to make sure the Jews knew throughout Chicago and throughout the world that people were going to remember and never forget. Now, I know that tonight we have some people who are not only the children of survivors, the grandchildren of survivors, but the great-grandchildren of survivors. And I was so surprised, I was sitting in the chamber, how much it moved me to hear and to see that we were being recognized for our experience and that we were not overlooked. It surprised me how much I needed that kind of recognition, not for me, but for my people. And in those moments, I realized just how important it is for those who often feel unseen and overlooked to be recognized. And that brings a level of healing. And so tonight we will be singing together the words of Mishaberach. We'll be sharing the names of those who are in need of healing, of body, of mind, of spirit. And I invite us to also think of those who often do not feel seen. Those caregivers who are taking care of people at home and in hospitals. Those who are joining us this evening from hospital beds. People who are survivors of sexual violence. People who are homebound. Those who are struggling with addiction. Our veterans. People who are wrestling with mental illness. And so many others. Sometimes we need to have our experiences not only spoken about, but by speaking about them, we show our level of care, and from there, healing can begin. And so tonight, we think of those who are in need of healing. I invite you to share the names of those you are thinking of this evening.
And from our online community, Johnny Reichertzer, Rick Feldman, Nina Silverstein, Siggy Frankel, Jim Clemens, Barbara and David Sussman, Pam Zolnay, the Kelly family, Sophia and Joel Finkel, Anna Kaplan, Teresa Dassinger, Norma Cotton Taylor, Brandon Howes and Phil Dunn, Jody Tittner and Barbara Durst and Maxine Durst, Jeanette Ponder and Eric Levin and Sharon Tarnoff, Ira Levinson, Michael Bade, Miriam Ament Foreman, Juju Lean, Bart Barish, Candy Roller, Larry Kamler and Hilda Weisenberg, Susan White Smith and Sarah Golub and Louise Chapman, Anthony Barnes, Winifred Halsey, Joan Stockhoff and Tom Spriggs, and Mary Spriggs, Marcella Wilson and family, Adrienne Golub and Cookie Marks and Thelma Stiles, Sandy Neville and Harold Cohn and Charlene Cohn and Max Cohn, Leanne Edwards, Anna Sikorsky and family, Daniel Weinzierler and Cindy Weinzierler, Polly Toman and Shirley Goldman Herzog and Heidi Habs and Tammy Marino and Angela and her family and Bob Beecher, Helene Vickers, Marie Seiler, Susan Levine, Marion Kramer and Lael Lubing, Mary Sherwood, Allison Musser, Jonathan Spitz and Barry Ferris and Elaine Baddock and Javier Escalante, Marty and Jeanette Callan and Don Sable and Flo Bernberg and Doug Parks and Bill Reese, Anna Kaplan and Eddie Beakill and Teresa Dassinger, and Tom Boritsky and Linda Boritsky, Lee Schlesinger and Tom Duhigg, and Howard Bennett, and Jody Tittner and Sheldon Steinloff, and Eric Levin and Sharon Tarnoff, Audrey Appleby and her husband Jim, Natasha Stoller and Pam Zolnay, and Jim Clemens, and Nina Silverstein and Mark Bacharach, and Chuck Abrams, Rabbi Sim Glazer, Beatrice Davis, Cheryl Tanita, Avner Drucker, and Esther Dorkacher, Cookie Marks and Thelma Stills, Lori Barish, Howard Nagelberg, and Carrie Weiss, Barbara Keir, Nancy Levine, Alan Cherkasky, and Kelly Schechter, Lauren Dietz, Jennifer Israel, Jeanette Ponder, Madeline Siner Lisetsky.
Hold them in our hearts as we turn to page 371, where we find the words of Misha Berach.
Help us find the courage to make our lives lasting. Let us say
Hello and Shabbat Shalom. Tonight is one of those nights where the Jewish and secular calendars auspiciously align. This Shabbat we read from Parshat Mishpatim. And Mishpatim is essentially a really long list of laws. The word Mishpatim itself means laws. It contains within it the basis for a Jewish belief in the right to choice, the right for pregnant people to decide if and when they are going to have children. Mishpatim this year happens to align with the 49th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, the court case that enshrined that right in this country. So tonight, as Rabbi Gelman told us, is Repro Shabbat. Repro Shabbat was organized by the National Council for Jewish Women, and synagogues across the country and city are calling attention to the connection between Jewish texts and the right to choose. Tonight, I will talk about Jewish text and abortion, how Jewish texts don't consider a fetus to be a full life, how even several thousand years ago, our ancestors prioritized the life of a woman over the potential of a baby. But before we get into this text study, I want to start by telling you that I am scared. I am scared because the right to choose in this country has become inaccessible to millions of pregnant people. When I think of that reality, I personally feel acute awareness of the loss of agency over my own body. That potential loss of freedom terrifies me. I am scared because we know that abortion bans lead to major increases in pregnancy-related deaths. Some studies show that abortion bans increase pregnancy-related deaths by up to 20%. I am scared because if Roe versus Wade is lost, many will feel hopeless and helpless. And I am scared that those feelings of helplessness will become our status quo. That this world in which many people do not have access to abortion will begin to feel normal. We are a diverse congregation, and we all have different relationships to the idea of abortion. I'm sure that many of you in this room or watching have yourselves chosen to have an abortion, or you might have close friends who have gone through the process. Whether we are aware or not, statistically, we all likely know someone who has had an abortion. Each of your stories and experiences is holy, and we are with you through any of the challenges that this Shabbat or this larger moment brings. Some of you may feel uneasy about abortion. This community is strengthened by diversity and difference. And so I hope that for all of us, wherever your life experiences have led you, that this is just the beginning of a conversation. The Jewish textual conversation about abortion begins in this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim. The Torah asks us to imagine a scenario in which a fight between two men breaks out in the street. In the passion of the moment, they accidentally strike a pregnant woman. The Torah tells us that if a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one who is responsible shall be fined. But if the woman dies, the men are liable for murder. The Torah, in its typical cryptic style, does not go into any more detail. But the distinction that it draws underscores the Jewish belief that goes back thousands of years that life does not begin at conception. As Jewish texts evolve, we see the discussion by rabbis of the Mishnah and Talmud continue to support the idea that the life of a person giving birth outweighs the life of the fetus. But most of these texts involve situations when the pregnant person's life is in danger. Those somewhat sheltered male rabbis of our past, who I love to study, were the voices asking the pertinent questions of their time. It's our job to bring new voices into the conversation, to help Judaism evolve so that it can adequately shed light on the questions of our time. Two modern Jewish thinkers, Dr. Sandra Lubarsky, who is a theologian who I am proud that I can kind of randomly call a relative, and Rabbi Emily Langowitz, both respond to an argument that allowing abortion or cutting off the potential of human life means harming Tselem Elohim, the image of God in the world. And this is a Jewish argument that is sometimes put forward against abortion, that it would be a harm towards B'Tselem Elohim, or that each person is created in the image of God. Dr. Lubarsky writes, to say that abortion diminishes God's image is to undermine God's ability to be responsive. What she is saying is that a God who is responsive responds to the needs of individuals. This kind of God does not respond with judgment to people choosing abortion. This kind of God operates in compassion, in growth, in an ability to meet needs, in change. Rabbi Langowitz continues, I believe fully in God's ability to be responsive to the growth and change of her created world. The beautiful paradox of divinity is that the unchanging one might indeed have the capacity for change. I love that a modern conversation of Judaism and abortion asks us to imagine God as change and responsiveness. To imagine a responsive God is to fight for a world which responds to the actual needs of each pregnant person, to provide support for them, whether they choose to abort or to carry the pregnancy. We ourselves can channel this holy responsiveness, and we will need to keep getting better at responding. If, as many are predicting, we lose the protections of Roe versus Wade, it's going to feel for many of us like an enormous loss. But as those of you who have lived through the fight for abortion rights know, it is not insurmountable. Part of imagining a responsive God is to know that we are never stuck in a political moment, that continually showing up and organizing is what will make a difference. One of my favorite Jewish metaphors for this kind of resolve is found in the Talmud in a story about Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, we are taught, became one of the smartest, most knowledgeable rabbis of his time. But he had been raised as a farmer with little education. He had no access to Torah or even any kind of basic education until he turned 40. How, the Talmud asks, did Rabbi Akiva gain so much knowledge when he started so late in his life? The story tells us that one day Rabbi Akiva was standing at a well and he noticed a stone that had been hollowed out by a continual drop of water. He stared at it and he saw that each drop of water wore away slightly over time the resistance from the stone. He said to himself, my mind is not harder than this stone. I will get started. I will study one section of Torah. We can become like that water from the well, pushing with gentle yet unrelenting perseverance until we see a world filled with choice and support and education and compassion. We can be like that water from the well until we see a world and feel a world filled with God's responsiveness. Shabbat Shalom. We move into our announcements.
There are a lot of exciting things coming up, and our first one is this Sunday and then next Sunday. We have two of these classes with Dr. Claire Suffren, Associate Professor of Instruction and Assistant Director of the Crown Family Center for Jewish and Israel Studies. She is leading a class on gender and Judaism, exploring how the rise in feminism in the 1970s impacted Jewish women, men, and Jews of any gender and reshaped Judaism intellectually, ritually, and socially. So it's a two-part series.
And I want to say to our extraordinary Rabbi Singer, Yashar Koach, Yashar Kochech, what a beautiful and wise teaching, and something we all needed to hear in different ways on this Shabbat. So thank you. Thank you. And you realize that we are among this gifted rabbi, that we are very, very lucky to continue to learn from her. And she is going to be part of a panel discussion of a very important book called Golem Girl. And so on Sunday at 2:00, she'll be part of Women of Temple Sholom and Or Chadash discussion. And are there others in this sanctuary and who might be joining online who might be with you on that panel?
Yeah, so the panel is going to be hosted by myself, by Riva, and by Dr. Stacy Reicherzer. And we are very excited to have the conversation. And just to be very clear, you do not have to have read the book in order to join. So we recommend that you read the book eventually, but you don't have to have read the book beforehand.
And it's going to be a discussion on Golem Girl, a memoir, in which the author Riva Lair shares her personal journey of being born with spina bifida at a time when physical differences were stigmatized, along with issues of sexuality and gender identity. Again, I'll just say it's at Sunday at 2:00.
And on Wednesday morning, there is going to be a study group session with Jay Rappaport, our incredible director of education. And he is teaching on Magadlu, a year of inspiration, where you will discuss people, wisdom, and works of art that are inspiring us and keeping us warm through these cold winter months.
Oh, may I?
Please. It'll be you and me.
Next week, Friday, so beginning at 7:45 is going to be our Or Chadash Shabbat service that comes after our 6:15 service. You're welcome to join for both, and some do. This is a beautiful service at 7:45 that is really dedicated to our Or Chadash community, which is our LGBTQ plus community. And it's a beautiful gathering. It's sweet and intimate. It's on Zoom. So
And in person.
you can, what?
And here.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
just kidding. It's not on Zoom.
It's on both. It's a mixed presence. You
Mixed
join however you
presence.
want.
I think they're calling it hybrid now. COVID terms. All right. So that's it for me.
You and I will have a lot of fun
That's
next
right.
week doing that.
We will.
I just also want to extend another mazel tov to the Mink family. We're so excited to celebrate tomorrow with your family as we welcome Braden for him becoming a bar mitzvah right here on this bima. And we are so looking forward to the following Shabbat when Samara, we are going to celebrate you becoming a bat mitzvah. So Grossman family, mazel tov, Mink family, mazel tov.
We turn now to our mourner's Kaddish.
Alinu.
Sorry, Alenu. Please rise on page 586.
Alinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, l'titru l'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam l'keinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, v'anachnu holim u'mishtachavim modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני מלך על הארץ היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
Now we turn to our mourner's Kaddish. Please be seated.
And as both of our rabbis beautifully taught, that this is Parshat Mishpatim, and which means laws. And in Judaism, we have two forms of laws, or in the Torah, we have two forms of laws. Chukim u'mishpatim. We have laws that are almost inexplicable. They are beyond reason. And then there are the laws that really any reasonable mind could follow, that are the mishpatim. And so this week we hear all kinds of laws that are important for how we set up a society of goodness. And so we hear about not oppressing the orphan or the widow. We hear about being kind to strangers and not isolating them. We hear about the importance of if we ever lend something to someone, or if someone has lent us something, we cannot let the sun set on before we return that thing that was lent. And so we have all these different laws, some which we can understand and others that seem unfathomable. And on this Shabbat, it is appropriate that then we are remembering a great rabbi who once taught from this bima and pretty much everywhere else he ever set foot. We are remembering Rabbi Fred Schwartz of blessed memory. And I want to say that we all know that there is so much about this place of Temple Sholom and this world that is changed for the better because he was an extraordinary leader. I'll say that he taught the inexplicable in ways that people could understand. He was someone who not only taught our children here at Temple Sholom, but he taught our children at Osrui and made sure that camping was something that was important because that not only taught Jews, it raised Jews. He was also someone who made sure that the kind of interaction that we have with one another across all different walks of Jewish life, he made sure to perpetuate that. For all of us who live and lead in his wake, we know that what we want to do most is continue to learn from him. And that is what we try to do. And we are very, very fortunate that Roberta Schwartz, his incredible widow, continues to teach here at Temple Sholom, and that we still have wonderful members of this Temple Sholom family who continue to make sure that we live in ways in which he would be proud. His life, his memory is a blessing to all of us. On this Shabbat, we are remembering those who recently passed from this earth. We're remembering Jeffrey Shannon, Susan Feldstein, and Francis B. Riker. We're also marking the yahrzeit of Sadie Glick Abrahams, Carol Ansbach, Judy Bellick, Elfrida Billingham, Melvin Blutter, Bertram Bradlow, Roy F. Cogan, Leslie Drucker, Elaine Finder, Jeffrey Fine, Leonard Fishman, Claire Forgash Liss, William Hyman, Renee Israel, Judith Bernkrant Neiman, Philip Pector, Jennifer Perlman, Herbert Hillel Rosengard, Sandra Gladstone Roth, Rose Salas, Rabbi Frederick C. Schwartz, Morris Schatz, Albert Scheer, Patricia Sheffer, Sheldon Sloan, Howard Solomon, Miriam Spielman, Walter Steinman, Mary S. Sapira, Philip Tesser, Lillian S. Tukinski, Sharon Weiss, and Layla D. Wolf. If there are others whom you are remembering, I invite you to say their name.
And from our friends online, remembering Ruth Wolf, Perry Kaminsky, Irving Newman, Donald Fife, Manuel Giffis, Florence Giffis, Howard V. Hahn and Sandra Goinshore, John Scott, Eddie Bayer, Bertha Steinloff, Marion Ross, Sherry Kamiko Goodman, Rita Lewis, Herbert Hillel Rosengard, Susan Feldstein, Claire Edelstein, James Gendon, Michael Cooper, as well as Sarah Hamilton, Juliana Schaefer, Lige Fletter, Helen Schneider, and Ruth Oppler.
Kaddish Yatom is found on page 590. Please rise.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחיי חון וביום החון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב במרו. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומן ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן ויעלמה ואמרו, יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, עושה שלום ממרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו, עושה שלום ממרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו Amen.
As we end our service, just to remind you, if you're joining us online, one of us clergy members will come say hello to everyone right as the service ends. And if you're with us in person, we'll have a few minutes in the social hall, Bettyport Hall, for masked, snackless chatting, which is worth it. And even in these times, we'll take it. So please join us. And we're ending with Ozi V'zimratia. God provides me with so much strength and with the fortitude to take whatever the coming week will bring. But before that, we get to rest and just enjoy the joy of Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Please
Shalom.
sing with us.
Beautifully said. Page 647.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.